As long as you sing countdown races when the countdown is going, that is acceptable.
Isn't it camp down races?
I don't know. I think you're right.
What did you say it was?
I thought it was
Countdown?
countdown races for
Not
some
countdown, but I don't think it's camp. What did you say it was, Corey?
I thought it was camp down.
I don't think it's either. I don't know what it is, but I don't know.
Now this requires some Googling after.
Yeah, somebody's
Camp
gonna
town.
Camp Town.
Camp town races. I was totally wrong.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't either of those.
Well,
originally called Gwine to Run All Night.
Okay.
Oh,
Right.
because we're going to run all night. Yep.
So DeCamp Town Races is what it's called.
I love that you guys are as much of like obscure information junkies as I am, to where that would be of interest.
So I was talking about this with my wife today because our daughter is 11 and she's like struggling in this art class because the art teacher isn't really teaching anything. She's just like, do whatever you want. And Scarlett's like, this is terrible. I'm like, you can do whatever you want. Like, use the supplies to do literally whatever you want. She's like, she's not teaching us anything. And then so I was talking to my wife and I'm like, we have to remember that, like, we grew up where we had to like look things up in an encyclopedia. Like if you wanted to know something, you might have to go to a library and physically use the Dewey Decimal System card catalog to find a book that may have something and use the index. Whereas she's just like speaks the question into the air and like a voice just delivers information. So maybe inventing something to do is not in this generation's repertoire. I don't know.
I could see that because I was like, that actually just sounds like my high school art experience. Not like I loved my high school art teacher, but she used to like fall asleep in class, like because she had I forget what that is when you randomly fall asleep. She was an older lady.
Not sleep apnea. Narcolepsy?
Yeah. So she'd like legit just fall asleep like mid-sentence. And then honestly, like that was the way the art school was, where it's like, here's some supplies, here's a stack of outdated nature magazines and like Smithsonian's and stuff, like draw some cool stuff. And every once in a while I'm going to set up a still life of a plant and ask you guys to draw it, and then really not teach much of anything. Although honestly, she was super supportive, and cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if that teaching style would work with this upcoming generation, because I'm one of those people that's like, you can't be on screens all the time. Like, I'm not one of those like let the TV babysit you parents. But I don't know if these kids have ever had to invent things.
Yeah, pre-COVID, I wasn't one of those parents, but I feel like because of COVID, we've been letting Ben just run rampant on his iPad, and it's like I start feeling guilty, and then I remember like we don't get a day off, so it's I think it's justifiable now.
Yeah, anyway, I don't know.
But half of parenting is feeling, I think, like 9 times out of 10 like you're doing it terribly.
Yeah. I mean, I think for not beating them and screaming at them, and we keep them fed and alive until they're 25-ish, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we can get awards for that, I think.
Yeah. So
yeah. Where's our award? I want my award, my participation trophy on that.
The thing that I do like is Scarlett came to me and said, Dad, what do you recommend so that I can make art enjoyable? Like, I'm trying, what can I do about this situation? Which is like,
that's good.
I wish that she would naturally come up with that, but this is after, months of being like, you're not allowed to complain about something that you're not willing to do something about. Like you can't, if you're not going to take action, you can't complain about it.
Yep.
So anyway, but today she was she was like, what can I do? And I was like, oh, okay. So let's come up with things. And of course I give her the wrong answer. I'm like, oh, well, I think you should read one of these 3 books on how to be creative. And she's like, I don't want to read a book on how to do this. I want you to just tell me how to do this. I'm like, I guess that makes sense. You're 11. You don't want to read like a psychology treatise on how the neurology of creativity.
Skim it.
Yeah, right. Read the chapter headings. Maybe that'll help. I don't know.
Yeah, we have enough trouble getting adults to read books like that. So.
Oh man. Yeah, I can't even get college. I'm like, I just tell my college students, read anything. I don't even care what it is, just anything. Just read anything that exists has got to be better than what you're doing right now. So.
I love it. I was just going to mention that Crimson Owl comments in the chats said Happy New Year. And that reminds me, Happy New Year, you guys.
Happy New Year. Have we not talked since the New Year?
No, this is the first Monday after the New Year. So.
Yeah.
I love it.
Happy New Year to Ronnie, too.
The first art check of 2021. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
love it.
I've caught a couple of Ronnie's videos the last little bit.
Oh yeah, I hate how even channels you subscribe to you don't get alerted. But I heard he was gonna do D versus M.
Yeah, no, he did.
Okay.
I don't know if he's completed it because I was watching.
Yeah, I gotta check that out. I gotta make note of that
about it, and it was really cool. He was talking about how they're mixing the like how they're using like big blocks of text, but it's in an interesting way because it's like in dossiers and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was good. Yeah,
I love it.
It's such a great book.
It is a good book. It's crazy we know that guy. All right, should we dip in?
Yes, we should
jump into our first art check of the year.
Woo! Yeah, I'll go first. I don't have a ton, but I put together a little Instagram thing of me inking this. This is what it looks like on Instagram, which is weird because it feels like we're just blocking Josh out because it's a square. But yeah, so I haven't uploaded the actual image yet, but it's a I can share it, I suppose. I was looking, I'll tell a quick story because I realize every once in a while how long-winded I am. Did you guys know that Instagram has a word limit? And if you write a caption that is too long, you hit a word limit. Anybody want to guess what the word limit is?
It's got to be huge because I've written some pretty long captions, so I can't guess.
I don't know. I haven't posted on Instagram in a year or so.
Stab in the dark. What do you think, Josh?
I can't even guess.
300 words.
2,200 words.
Oh. Wow. And you hit that?
I wrote a novel.
I couldn't figure out what was going on. I hit 2,200 words, and I was like, it kept like erroring out. So then I Googled it, and I was like, oh crap. And so I have 2,200 words, and then I have another couple paragraphs after that as a comment to like finish what I was saying. So shorter than that, which is not. It's pointless now that I've rambled this long. I've been working on this jacket, right? And I'm getting into screen printing, and I'm looking at stuff, and I was like, it'd be really cool is because with everything going on, I want like a First Amendment patch.
Yeah, right? So I like that idea.
I Googled it. I cannot find a First Amendment patch.
Wow.
I can find a bunch of Second Amendment patches that show up when you search for the First Amendment patch. I can find patches that say that the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment. Other than just like a piece of text that says literally the First Amendment, or like one of those quote cards that just has the actual First Amendment copied and pasted. And it's just like, it's like one of those picture quotes. There's no actual interesting looking patches.
That's crazy and sad at the same time.
Yeah, and I was like, it's a really cool amendment.
It's kind of the best amendment, but
yeah, it's the first one. It's literally like the thing that allows us to express what we express. It's the thing that allows the internet to exist. Anyway. So I made one. So that's my long story is I designed this patch, and I tried to cover all the bases of religion, speech, press, assembly, petition, grievances, and things like that. And so the religion was a little hard to do because I didn't want to do like a specific religion. I didn't want to do like Christianity or Buddhism or whatever, because like most symbols of religion are like icons or logos, and so that one's a little bit more subtle, but I got like the thorns and some dove feathers and the crown. The 3-pronged crown.
I'm not seeing that. How am I missing that?
Is it not up?
I'm not seeing. Is it hidden by the Artcheckin logo?
Oh, yeah.
There's a crown up there, but I can't.
Let me get rid of that. Yeah, so there's the crown at the top of the fist.
Right.
And then to the right and left of the camera are 2 dove feathers. And then in between the microphone and the film camera is a plated thorns.
Oh, I see it. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. I'd almost like to see it done like maybe with the circular thing around it too, with maybe like the Ramones logo. Well, I guess that's based on the whatever, but have those go around. I don't know if you can because the way it would probably be obscured.
Yeah, I mean, if I broke it out. If it like broke the boundaries, I think I could probably do something.
Or maybe a second one, because I like this the way it is too. But if there aren't any, then why not make 2?
Yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea, because I drew most of these separately, and so they're on different layers, so I could break a lot of them out. But yeah,
I actually like that idea of having it kind of say like First Amendment, and then have all the sub lines like I like that idea, like having those surround it almost like the Ramones names,
Yeah. As much as I like the First Amendment, it's not pithy. Like the Second Amendment, there's like a phrase, shall not infringe, it's like, and it talks about the whole thing. But
it's unfortunate a lot of people forget about the well-regulated part.
Well-regulated militia, yeah. But the First Amendment, it's like a list of things, and there's specific phrases that apply to one thing but not the entire list.
Right.
And so it was really hard for me to figure out a way to like figure out text that would encompass the entire idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. But yeah, but it's
really good.
Yeah, so I was kind of excited, and I'm trying to get people to jump in and vote on what they like. I mean, I prefer the white on black, but yeah. But this is the sketch where it started. So, yeah, that's it.
Love it.
So there's that, and then I've been doing other more things, more of the breaking the chains. So we've updated a lot of the stuff. We're moving along on that. I think I've got most of the things rigged for that animation. I've got to do a little bit of rigging on some of the side people, and then I've got to set up lip sync, and then we'll kind of move on from there. So yeah. Oh, he says we did review Dinosaurs versus Martian. Mars Bots. Okay, that's what I thought. 1975, and this week is 1997.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, we'll check that out.
Cool. So yeah, So that's pretty much that. What about you, Josh?
So first, before I show anything, I do have to pull this up, but I'll just mention that, and let me pull this up so I get it correct. But yeah, so the interview I did with Read, Learn, Live podcast, which is hosted by this guy John Monaster. It's a really cool like literary podcast. The interview I did with him about my book, Two Stories, is right here, which you can buy on Amazon. It's my graphic novel about faith and mental illness. But anyhow, so that interview, which is really insightful and cool, and he asked a lot of questions that I haven't really honestly answered on a lot of interviews about it. So I just highly recommend that. Check that out on like wherever you get podcasts. There's also a link on my website. So if you go to joshuakimball.com and just look under interviews, that'll link to all the interviews I've done. And then another thing that has no visuals to support it, I finally got back on the train of sending out press releases and follow-ups to press releases that I've sent out. I kind of took a break from doing that, and I think it was mostly rational. Some of it was distraction, but some of it was rational because it's like not a lot of people are checking their email on New Year's. So today was a good day to get back on that. And then I also did these, which are, so I thumbnailed a good chunk of the next part of the second book for Two Stories. And so at this point, like kind of this intense scene that's like in a person's apartment where they're talking to like a dead computer and their t-shirt. It's kind of a crazy part of the story. You guys can actually check these out on Instagram too, on my Instagram, because I post them. But yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. So that's pretty much what I got done. But I am kind of excited because it's funny when you're in the thick of it. It's like I'm like kind of over the halfway point now of just blocking it out and coming up with thumbnails and roughs. And that is, I mean, that's encouraging because like, I don't know, it can be daunting when you're like in the middle of these things. So anytime you're at like a further than halfway point, it's kind of encouraging. Even though it's a halfway of a chunk of the different processes I'm going to have to do. I do think batching is going to help. So, but I'm going to keep in mind like productivity and stuff, but it makes me excited because it's like, you know, and if I'm technically kind of not saying it, but I am like, I was thinking about the conversation with Scott. I was like, I'm just going to consider it the first day of the 100 days of making comics, the next challenge. And I'm just going to stick to it. And so I don't know what day that would put me on. So now I'm on like day 4, I guess, of the 100 days.
Yeah. If you started the first of the year, then you're on day 4.
Yeah. So that's my goal because that's easy to keep track of. And then also I'm just kind of doing it anyway, but I figured it'd be fun. And then I'm not really going to do videos or anything, but I'll talk about my progress here. But I kind of figure I might as well call it the 100 days when I'm doing the 100 days. So, so anyhow, that was something that kind of came out of that. So anyway, that's basically it. Cool. What about you, Scott? What'd you get going?
All right. Well, speaking of, I also started the 100 Days of Making Comics. Yes. This video, so I'll have a video. This isn't necessarily going to be a recap video, but it'll be up tomorrow, and it's tips, and it's just kind of an introduction. I am 4 days in, and I decided I want to try to do an hour a day as opposed to the 30 minutes.
Well, wait, Scott, so you started on the 1st?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's easier that way. It's easier that way.
Together. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay.
If you start at the first day of the year, it's easier.
I feel like I'm missing out. I should have started on the 1st.
We'll start on the 4th, man.
I'm pretty buried for the next couple months, actually.
So if you're thinking about maybe taking the challenge or whatever, this video will be up tomorrow, and I'll give some tips on how to start and everything. And I have been recording a little bit of my process, although it's harder to do visually when you first start off because it's writing. I'm basically, I've been writing and going over everything and trying to piece things together, and it's coming along. I got some good ideas, and seems like they're starting to connect. But so I filmed a little bit of that. But the other thing is I'm getting close to the end, so there's a lot of spoilery stuff. So it's going to be, I got to figure out how best to do this. But anyway, so yeah, there's that. And like I said, so in addition to working on the comic, I have been producing videos. I got this video coming out. I did another video for my Patreon. And I did a little bit of work on KDP, but not as much as I'd like to. We'll probably get into that with some challenges and things. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I've been doing. I'm excited to be back working on the comic and everything again.
Awesome.
But I said a bunch of, if you guys watch the Artcasters, or if you watch the video I did on my goals, there's a lot of stuff. I was hoping to, I mean, I'm not behind or anything, but I was hoping to get ahead of everything. Like my goals for the month, I wanted to kind of get a lot of them done already, just so I could so it'd be easier, get all that stuff done, then I can work on some other stuff. But so far that hasn't been the case. But I'm not like I said, I'm not behind or anything. But that's that's what I've been up to.
That's really awesome, and I think that's cool. I'm going to be a little under the radar with my hundreds, but that's cool that we're doing them simultaneously. So I think that'll be good. I'm also excited because I just can't wait to see the next issue of Young and the Dead. For anybody who's not following that, you guys should go get it so you can catch up before the next issue, because it's like right at kind of like the rising action and right at the climax, from what I get.
Yeah, everything's starting to come together. So, I mean, whereas before, I mean, this issue, and I still don't know if it's going to be one or two more issues, but this issue, there's still, the way I tell stories, I kind of jump from scene to scene and kind of, I try to do some clever transitions where you think, where one scene kind of leads into another scene, but it's in a different place or whatever. But anyway, so there'll be a little more of that, but eventually it will all end up in the same place, and I guess it'll just play out from there. So it'll be a little different once it gets towards the end. So, and I have kind of an epilogue and everything in mind and all that stuff. So I'm excited to finish, but I definitely will be finishing the story, whether it's going to be one or two issues or one bigger issue, I don't know, but I'm completing the story. So
that's so exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so challenges, I guess, nothing huge for me. But beginning of the semester, I'm teaching one class that I haven't taught in a few years. That's changed since I taught it last. So I've got to get a hold of that and figure that out. And then another class that that is new, that hasn't existed before. So I've got to write that one. So anyway, there's those two, and then just, basic.
That's a challenge. I mean, setting up a curriculum for a new class is pretty tough. So
yeah. And then for some reason, I woke up Sunday morning and it occurred to me that like my internal clock was off, because I thought I had like a full week before the semester started. And it starts on Wednesday. For some reason in my mind, it had like shifted and I had way more time than I have. So I've been playing catch up today and tomorrow before class starts. So, but anyway, so there's some of that stuff. And then just more snow than I've seen in a long time. It's probably been about 7 years since we've had a winter that's had this much snow. It's just so much snow all the time. so there's just a lot of plowing and digging out and whatever. So my neighbor cut through the berm that the city plow left the other day, so that saved me about an hour. So that was nice of him. But anyway, yeah. So there's all the extra stuff that is great. I don't want to complain about it because there's a lot of benefits to living where I live. one of the downsides is that you just have to spend, sometimes several hours a day for 5 or 6 days in a row, digging yourself out of the snow. So, but yeah. So anyway, got to test out my snow. I got a new type of snow chains that I haven't seen before. And I was driving with my family to a thing, and somebody had from out of town, because they were dropping off a college student, had parked in the berm on the side of the road and buried their car. And so I put chains on their trucks.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
And it worked, which is nice. So it was a good opportunity to test those, because I'd rather test it. Normally when you put chains on, it's like the sun's down, it's in the middle of a blizzard, you're like halfway up a pass, you've already fallen off the road, or the cops and said, you can't go. Like the last time I put chains on, it was like I didn't have gloves, so like I was out there in like a hoodie, and like my hands were like freezing because you're like hugging the tire, and it's wet and it's snowing on you, and like you're holding metal chains that are like frozen and trying to pull on them really hard to get them to attach. This time was much more pleasant because the sun was out. I wasn't stuck. I didn't have like a pregnant and or infant child going, or anyway, the last couple times I put chains on, it was unpleasant. This was like 15 minutes on the side of the road, like a mile from my house. Nice. Somebody else's car. It's fine. So anyway, so some of that stuff. Josh, challenges?
For me, it's been just fighting like exhaustion. And so like that seems to kind of happen every once in a while, but like especially lately there, where I live, like it's like we don't get snow, but we get weeds like crazy. And so I've been on this project of weeding the lawn, and we have a pretty big backyard that has not been landscaped or anything since we moved in. It's just dirt and weeds. And so I'm now like about 75% done weeding, and I mean like legit, like pull it out by the root weeding, which is a nightmare in a desert area where the name of the game is weeds. So that's been exhausting, and then just dealing with kind of balancing the flow of like having a bunch of days off. Like I had, this is my last day of my vacation for New Year's and stuff, and it was nice, but it's like now having to get back into workflow is going to be really tough. So that's basically it. But it's all kind of good problems to have, and the main thing that I've realized too, and I love this about the reset of a new year, and I don't want to take this the wrong way, where, I've had friends who like, New Year's are like, I'm going to lose 50 pounds this year. And they're like really good for like 4 weeks. And then they, only lose 5 pounds. And they're like, I failed my resolution. I don't want to be that guy. But I will say there is something cool about kind of a starting at one kind of thing, where I do hope to have a better work habit and workflow this year. And like, it's kind of nice to remember that it's like a fresh start. And hopefully, hopefully a more positive year. So I don't know. Scott, what were your
challenges? So mainly just end of the year, beginning of the year stuff to take care of, that I'm glad I did. I'm glad I got it over with, like taking down Christmas decorations and Christmas lights. Yeah. I cleaned out my garage. So it's nice to have like a clean garage that if I wanted to, I could probably park 2 cars in, which, usually I can park 1 in, but there's like stuff all over the place. So that's kind of cool.
You may not be able to pull it back out.
yeah, so and sometimes I get trapped in there because when somebody else parks halfway in the driveway and my car's like over too much because there's stuff on either side, I gotta kind of finagle it out. But anyway, so that's cool. I got that all taken care of, so that's kind of a load off. So it's basically, how you kind of get all this other stuff out of the way so you can hopefully free up time, and it's just so that stuff's not weighing on you like, oh, I need to do that. So but of course that pushed everything else back. So that stuff, and then some kind of family stuff that I had to take care of, and let's see what else. Yeah, that's about it. So and so hopefully I'm back on track and everything. But yeah, just that kind of stuff.
Nice. Great. Plans?
Yeah, plans for me. Keep going. I hadn't even thought of doing a second First Amendment patch, so I might play around with that. I've got a couple other patch ideas, and then getting some stuff going with the more stuff in the animation that Jim and I are working on. And then I'll be playing Single Dad for about 3 days. So production this week is going to be a little bit slower than normal. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and I haven't talked to Kathy yet, but I'm assuming that Kathy and I are going to get started again on Fridays. So to do the second art check of the week. So
love it.
Those are kind of my plans.
She had a good New Year too. Really, really excellent painter.
Yeah, her stuff is awesome. I love.
Cool.
How about you, Josh?
So my goal is to try to do a rough page a day. But since I'm doing the hundreds, even if I don't do a rough page a day, I need to spend at least a minimum of, I'll commit to what Scott's committing to for fun. I'll say a minimum of an hour, because I find that like 30 minutes, and I'm sure Scott's gotten there too. But I think when you start getting more serious about cartooning, like 30 minutes a day is not a lot. And it's a good starter. It's a good starter to build a habit. But I think all of us end up spending more than 30 minutes anyway. So that's a good, I like that hour cap. That'll be good to keep it. The one thing that's hard about the 100 days, though, is it is amazing how often you, like 40 days into something, you do take like one day off, so it's kind of it's an interesting and good habit to just try to push through and do it every single day. So I think that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's my plan. And then I need to be sending out, I'm not really going to commit to a number, but I need to be sending out press releases every day and then following up on those press releases as well. So that's got to kind of be mixed in my daily routine. And then just, the normal thing of I've finally, since getting that water rower, I've rebuilt my rowing schedule, which is like every other day. And I need to row at least a mile. And I'd like to up that to where I'm rowing more than a mile every 2 days, because a mile is now a ton. I think on a water rower, it's a little more hardcore, but I also I think I could do better than a mile. So I need to get there. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I guess I didn't mention that. I'm probably going to start doing yoga with my girls. Because I gotta get some movement going.
Yoga's good, man. It's intense. It's intense on your core, especially. It's kind of nuts. So
yeah. I mean, I'm like, not that old now. I carry a cane in my car just in case I have to use it. So I'd like to not degenerate further.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'll probably do that. Scott, how about you?
So for what's up next, let's see. Yeah. Plans. I'm gonna hopefully get back to I've got a bunch of books. Wow, I got a bunch of books that are in various stages of completion, and I want to start finishing those up and uploading them. So I'll be hopefully getting back to focusing mostly on KDP, and also I need to come up with. I had some people express some interest in me doing like an apprenticeship type thing. So I think the best way for me to do that is kind of work it into my Patreon. So I got to figure out how to do that. I'm going to change some tiers. I put up a Patreon video talking about that. So I gotta figure out how exactly I want to do all that. So that's what I plan on doing. And the other thing that I forgot to mention that I have started back on this diet and workout regimen actually just today. So I have been drinking a lot of water. So you guys might have to excuse me right now. I got to go use the restroom. So I'll be back.
Nice.
Are you trying to do a gallon a day?
Oh, I'm pretty sure I'm past a gallon.
Oh, past a gallon. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not. I've been drinking a lot of these big things of water.
Yeah.
Like I got a little boost in there, but some energy stuff. But yeah, I've been drinking those usually. So I don't know if that would add up to a gallon or not. But
Nice.
Yeah.
What energy stuff, out of curiosity?
It's called Zip Fizz. It's like, because I was just putting like flavor. I mean, I've been just drinking the regular water all day, but I just needed a little energy, and I stopped drinking alcohol, at least for right now. So
Nice.
usually when when I do this, I'll have like a sip of whiskey or something, or rum and Coke or something. So I just the Zip Fizz, it's supposed to not have. I was using the other stuff that's got like the aspartame in it, but apparently this doesn't have it. So I guess it's a little better for you.
Cool. Well, it gives you a little boost. That's good.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I will be right back.
Cool. So I guess we got to kind of figure out a rough topic. And so any topic on your mind, Corey, you want to start off on?
Oh, I forgot to mention on plans. This is kind of, I don't know, we've talked about this before, but we've probably talked about everything before because this is like over 270 episodes. But I was talking to somebody on Discord, and they were like, I'm going to comment here on Discord because I try not to be political online about my my First Amendment patch. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Because I didn't view it as being political, though I touched on political issues, but I felt like it was fairly balanced because I was trying to point out in my over 220 word or 2,200 word rant there. I was trying to point out like the problem with like modern communication. So I don't know if you want to talk about like anything like that, or
I can. I'm down. I mean, I'm definitely.
Yeah, I'm
ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I might be a little hesitant because I also want to do like one of the things that I want to do this year is get more into the type of videos that I used to do a couple of years ago, where it was like kind of the video essays while I drew stuff.
I like that.
So I don't know if I want to. I don't know, but that's what's on my mind right now. But
cool. I'm still trying to troubleshoot I really like the idea of doing comic reviews, and I think I might actually do it. But if I do it, I think what I'm going to do is focus on really solid audio for it, so that I can kind of use some of the skills I've acquired throughout the years of like podcasting back in the day where it was highly produced, and then kind of overlay that over footage of like flipping through the book, and kind of highlighting different parts and kind of approaching it from the extent of like what influenced me about the book and what kind of notes I can pick up as a cartoonist on like approaches to paneling and drawing and stuff like that. So it's got kind of some use as well for myself. Like something that stuck with me was like when Scott was talking about his Making Comics 101 series, how like a lot of the stuff he's recorded is actually useful for him as well, right? Because he can go back and be like, oh, like that was a good tip that I told myself in the future, like, so it's like, I think that could be really helpful too, to like highlight like what it is about different books that have influenced me, that I own, and like what I can kind of take from it, or what I have taken from it to kind of build my own work, and what other cartoonists could kind of get from it as well. So I think that would be fun, but I still need to figure out like timing and how I would work that into my crazy limited schedule, because I'm still going into work physically, so my commute is still about the same pre and post COVID, so
yeah.
But
yeah, that would be cool. I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe let's talk about maybe I know we've already talked about plans, but it might be interesting to kind of like troubleshoot / brainstorm like content ideas, and like how, why, and what we're doing as far as like the content, because like I'm trying some stuff I haven't done before, and mixing stuff I have done into different things. So maybe that could be a good topic. And we've got a couple comments here. I don't have my comments pulled up. Oh yeah. It's funny. Sometimes I'll reread one of my comics and I'm surprised with the solution that I came up with, which is also worrying. Yeah, I did. One of the reasons that I did 100 days of animation the way that I did it, was because I knew I wasn't going to remember everything. So many times early on when I was learning animation after the 100 days, I would be like, I think I already solved how to do this. And I'd go like search through the videos. And so it's interesting because very few people have watched any of those videos compared to some of my other videos. But I did name them and write the descriptions in such a way that I would be able to search for them again. Nice. And so they do come up, and I am like, at least for me, they're written in such a way that I can be like, wow, there's a way that I figured this out, and I'll search for it and it'll come up. But yeah, so let's talk content plans. I'll start. I am close to, I think I might give Twitter one more year, and then make a decision on whether I'm going to stick around or not. And I've gotten into the habit of just about once a month, just deleting all my tweets. I don't know why exactly, because it's not like I need to be careful, because I'm not like a bad person. I don't have like hate for anyone in particular or whatever, but Twitter seems like an interesting place from an occupational standpoint. It's a bit worrying. I've seen people like use a word that's fine, but then two or 3 years later, the contextual meaning of that word changes, and they get roasted for using that word in a tweet that's like several years old and stuff. And I'm like, it's kind of a weird thing. So I don't know. So that's one thing. And then I have found myself defaulting to Instagram without thinking about it. So like, and I question that. Like, I made this video. I'll pull it up again, and I wanted to run this by you guys, because I don't know, as far as like audience and traction and whatnot. I don't know if I've been shadow banned. I was kind of concerned with the amount of reaction I got into this post, because I posted it at like 10 a.m. So like people are awake, because a lot of times on Instagram, I'll post when I'm done. So it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and like my friends in Europe are awake, but like, nobody in the States is awake. So I posted it at a time where everybody was, and I got 6 likes in the first hour. And I was like, this is one of the better things I've made recently. And so it's picked up a little bit, but I feel like, I know Facebook and Instagram have gotten very gun shy on politics in general, and because I'm doing satire and parody and commentary about the political process and about voting and about things like that. I mean, at one point in time, I wanted to throw $10 at something just to promote it, and they wouldn't even let me do that. They wouldn't even take my money to promote the post. And so I sort of wonder if I'm shadow banned on there. But then the other thing is, I used to make this type of content where I would do so something like this. I put this together. Obviously, it's a square format, but initially I was piecing these time-lapse videos together to do kind of what Scott's been doing recently, where you play this and then you talk over the top of it. It's like and I was considering either doing it live like you've been doing it, or doing it pre-recorded or whatnot. But it was interesting to me that my initial thing was, I'll just put stuff up on Instagram. Like, it's become easier for me to put stuff up on Instagram, or at least habitually easier to put stuff up on Instagram than put stuff up on YouTube. But I am starting to feel about Instagram the way that I feel about Facebook, which is that they're just going out of their way to suppress content creators. Like, they are it's almost like there's no way to win. And YouTube's rough, but I don't feel like they are. I feel like it's crowded, not like they're actively suppressing your audience. Like, people that have actually, I've got, I don't know, over 2,000 people that follow me on Instagram, which is good, but not huge. I've got close to 4,000, I think 3,500 or something on YouTube, which again is good, but not huge. But neither of those do I do those type of numbers. It's the old, subscribers, followers don't really count towards engagement and metrics type thing. But I don't know, I'm kind of it's interesting because I think I'm trying to figure, I like long form content, and I like long form content being repurposed into shorter bite-sized pieces. But I don't know what the right place is for my voice. That's what I'm trying to find. I hate TikTok. It's funny, but I don't want to be a content creator on TikTok. I'm almost 100% sure that's.
You don't want to roller skate, and
yeah, I mean, I am naturally rebellious, and so the entire idea of chasing trends, which is 95% of what TikTok is repulsive to me. As a person, I don't mean that I don't think other people should do it, but doing it myself feels super disingenuous.
So to me, I think it stems down to you have limited resources in the sense of time.
Yeah.
And as a human,
yeah.
So you kind of just need to pick one and just go with it. Whichever feels more fluid for you, I think, is probably the best. And if that's Instagram, then maybe repurpose what you're using for Instagram for other social media. And if it's YouTube, then repurpose that for other social media, but make your primary YouTube. But I would just pick whichever. And if it feels more organic, it feels more organic. I also wouldn't worry about being shadow banned or getting hardcore taken off platforms, because, as much as there's horror stories out there of that happening to people, I haven't seen it happen often where it's highly misplaced. The kind of things people are saying that are getting them deplatformed are not things I've ever heard uttered from your mouth.
Right. And I'm not worried about being deplatformed.
Yeah.
Shadow banned is different. Shadow banned is where they just put a little tweak in the algorithm to say just don't show this type of content to a lot of people. We're a little worried about this type of content.
Yeah.
I know I've fallen into, you got large large segments of society, whether you agree with them or not, this is happening. Large segments of society saying that, there's voter fraud and there's all this stuff. And at that point in time, I released a satirical video about replacing Congress with battle bots. And in the script and in the captions, I used the word electoral college, or the phrase electoral college.
Yeah. So it's just bad timing in that sense too.
Well, or good timing, but I mean, good or bad timing because it was topical, but it was, I think it fell in. I think it's like a dolphin getting caught in a tuna net. It doesn't belong there, but it doesn't mean that the dolphin's happy about it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, it's not what it's meant for. So I'm not worried about being targeted by these algorithms. I'm worried about, I want my work to be seen. I'm not interested in fame, fortune. I'm not trying to make money off of any of this or whatever. But like,
none of us want to be.
I am making it for an audience.
Falling without anyone saying it.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm trying to, I'm just trying to figure out. Gary's saying that there's ways to see if you're shadow banned. I haven't dug deep. I've just noticed a significant dip in the normal amount of interactions that I'm getting. And it could be, that people could be people that don't care. It could be just, people are like, yeah, go back to doing stupid stuff that, isn't controversial. I don't know. I'm not sure. But my main thing is, I don't know if I have a specific, like, I like this one over this one or whatever. But I'd like to pick the most effective for my audience. And I don't know if I know my audience well enough. I know individuals, but I don't feel like I understand their like content consumption habits and desires. And I kind of fit into a weird spot. I've had my YouTube channel like professionally analyzed by like people who get paid to do that type of thing. I met a couple of people at a conference and they were like, yeah, we'll take a look at it and whatever. And they were like, there's nothing that you can do. You're doing everything right. And your type of content just isn't going to work on YouTube. There's not an audience for it. So I think while I take that with a grain of salt, because I don't believe that it's not going to work, but I wonder if the way I produce things just isn't, isn't the type of thing that people are going to stick around for on certain channels or platforms or whatever.
So to me, Corey, I think like one of the things that's appealing about what you pursue in art and makes you unique as an artist and stuff is your authenticity and your pursuit of authenticity. And I really think you just kind of need to make something authentic and like, right. and put it on whatever platform you authentically feel connected to. And I think that's actually like, honestly, the only way anything ever goes viral again, or goes viral anyway. And one thing I was realizing that ties into this, that goes into that like comic review thing, is like, I really am passionate about podcasting. Right. Like podcasting as a medium, I think is amazing. Yeah. And I realized like, I haven't really put like the level of production into like my own YouTube channel that I would have into when I was podcasting at the peak of when I was podcasting. And I haven't seen as much success. And I think part of that might be because I haven't really put that like heart and humor and care like into it to the extent that I did with podcasting. And so one thing I was realizing, and part of that's also time based, where it's just like I haven't had the time. But I do kind of feel like if I'm going to do the review thing, if I do end up doing that, I need to do it like really well and to the best of my ability and try to make it fun and engaging. And then just kind of whatever platform that ends up on is the platform it ends up on. But I do kind of think sometimes we can get lost in this, like which platform is right for me, and kind of miss the forest for the trees, in the sense of like, it's more like what you're making and then whatever you feel most comfortable with, like putting it on. So to me, I think if you're saying like Instagram's been more receptive, I've personally found that like it's weird. I haven't really done heavy amounts on Instagram, but I have noticed that like people are way more receptive and engaged on Instagram. I still enjoy Facebook just for like conversations and keeping in touch with people. I know it's like a very hated platform right now, but it's like I enjoy it. Although I dislike a lot of what people dislike about it. Twitter's never really caught my fancy because it's at its core, it's based on like condensed media, right? And I'm just not a condensed person. Like I'm not a person who says things in one sentence.
You got to use it the way I do, which is not what it's intended for. Just long strings of short sentences.
I like the way you use Twitter though, and I think your Twitter use is really good. But I think at the end of the day, like you just kind of need to be authentic, and then the other stuff will happen. And in reality, I'd say it's probably the same with like, you know, fears of like future people looking back at like an old feed. I think the key thing is like, are you being the best person you can be now? And, you know, and when you're picking a hill to die on, is it a hill to die on? And like, as long as you're considering that, like, I don't think any of us can approach like creating media authentically and then have to like fully filter ourselves where we're thinking like 20 years from now, will it be appropriate?
Well, and I'm definitely not the type of
all those
person.
offensive things on the 100 Days of Making Comics that he's going to be putting on because he's very seedy and offensive. I'm just kidding. I was kidding.
No, but I mean, I'm not. Maybe I'm not saying this right. I'm really not looking to game the system or change who I am. It's a difference. It's the difference of it's not Carol Dweck. Who's the one that wrote Braving the Wilderness, The Gifts of Imperfection? Brene Brown. She talks about the difference between fitting in and belonging, right? And then and one is where you change who you are to fit in with the crowd, and the other one is you find the crowd that you belong to.
Yeah, like it's almost like you find your crew, your team.
Right. And my problem, I think, is that at my core, I am at odds with all of the current tech companies' desires. So I'm literally using tools that I feel like are designed to destroy humanity. And so it's not that I'm inauthentic, but it's like I literally don't belong on these platforms because I believe that the way that they are designed is a threat to the human species. And so, but I also feel like that's the most effective way to get the word out on these things. And I don't want to, I don't want to just like go all Unabomber and go cut myself off from society and go live in the woods. Cause I do enjoy Twitter, and I enjoy Instagram, and I enjoy Facebook, and I enjoy YouTube. I enjoy using these platforms. I mean, most of my social interaction is done this way digitally with you guys and people that are in the chats and things like that. But at the same time, I also believe that like there are teams of software engineers that are trying to gamify our communication to such an extent that it's destroying our ability to empathize with other people, and it's causing huge chasms of tribalism and othering and hate. And so
you have to do the same thing like what you're describing. It's like I'm a similar personality. It's like my book, right? I wrote myself into a corner. It's like it literally is really difficult to market, and it starts off really heavy in a topic that will turn off like 9 out of 10 readers because it talks pretty openly about mental health struggles and stuff. So, but like that's what I wanted to write. And so I wrote it knowing like that actually is not going to hit the same margins as a lot of things. And I'm going to give it my best try to kind of get it out there and have it find its tribe.
Sure.
But it's like, like I think that's one of the beauties of Outcasts. And I think that's the type of people who make good artists, where it's like, we're not necessarily always the people who like found a tribe very easily. We have to form our own tribes, and that's kind of the way to do it. So I think like regardless of platform, you just need to stick to your tribe. If our tribe is a tiny tribe, then it's a tiny tribe. I like I like the small tribe we have, and I actually feel like there's strength there. And I think when that tribe grows, people are going to look back and be like, how did I get part of that thing? And, I honestly think that's how these things happen,
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that. And I guess my frustration and my curiosity is it's not that I feel like there isn't, an audience for what I'm doing.
Just where
the deck is stacked against my ability to reach them. I feel like if I was able to find the people, that were interested in this type of thing, then there'd be a connection there. I feel like I can add value there. I feel like I could get value. I feel like there'd be a good value exchange, and and there'd be some enrichment, but my message is, at least for the last year or more, my message is not helpful to like the basic, business operations of the tools that I'm using to get the message out. And that doesn't mean that I'm like, that I'm trying to try to lead a bunch of people to not use social media or whatever. I think people should mitigate their use based on their mental health, but I want to get the message out. And so that's the challenge is I'm comfortable using all of the channels that I use right now. It's not I'm forcing myself or swallowing a pill or eating my vegetables to use them. I enjoy them. I naturally go that way. But I'd like to gather that tribe. And this is what Gary's saying is how I've heard Twitter described really well. Twitter is walking through a public square, loudly having a conversation with yourself, hoping that other people jump in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like the messages in a bottle thing.
So I mean, I would think about this like Scott's channel. Scott, you should chime in here because you have one of the more effective social media platforms any of us have had. And I do remember years ago, Scott kind of making the decision to like kind of stick with his thing. And it was like initially Scott was kind of and I might be reading too much into this, but I remember there was some concern about like the lab coach. Should I stick with the lab coach? Should I do this thing? And you kind of stayed true to what you thought your channel should be. And then, since YouTube ended up being like one of the platforms that kind of fit what you were doing, like you just kind of stuck with YouTube. And what's weird is YouTube numbers grew, and it's not like that magically solves everything and like suddenly you have all the support in the world and like but I do think it's like it's a good example of like Scott, you just kind of stuck with your thing and it sort of like something caught and it grew.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, I always, and I shouldn't think about this, and hopefully that's one of the reasons why I'm starting to do this leadership training in February, but to get out of this mindset. But sometimes when I think about it, I think, okay, I've been on YouTube for 8 years maybe, and I've been posting at the very least once a week.
Yeah.
in that 7 years, sometimes more, but never less. And for me, it's like, okay, sometimes I think you, and kind of like what Corey was saying about being shadow banned, sometimes I think that YouTube has just decided that my content isn't worth enough to like share out, because I mean, there's stuff that gets shared to me that I have never clicked on, but it keeps getting shared to me. Like there's like reaction videos and things like that have, I don't know why it keeps getting recommended to me. I've never clicked on one. I mean, so I don't know why that is, but there's certain things that they just feed to you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for whatever reasons, and I've seen so many, channels that, for whatever reason, art channels and things like that, that just kind of have started after me and kind of surpassed me. And I'm like, and some of the content is good, but I don't know that's necessarily better than what I've been putting out. So, so it's a constant thing with me. It's to the point where sometimes I'm wondering if I just like start over like a new channel, if YouTube will say, well, this is a new channel, maybe we'll give it a chance, because and not making the connection that I have this other channel, but like, okay, this other channel is not worthy of anything for us to push that out. So, but if I started from scratch, but then do I really want to start from scratch? And if I do, and I have come a long way in that, but it's taken a long time, and it's just a steady growth. There's never been like a, kind of a spike or anything like that. So
my question is, like, my question on it is like, I mean, is this a grass is greener scenario, right? Because the numbers you have on your YouTube channel, like Corey would be happier with those numbers than the numbers he has now on his YouTube, right?
Right.
I'm happier with either of your numbers. Like my YouTube's
right. But here, Josh, I mean, I think you'd admit that you're not posting every week like I am.
No, and I haven't put like a hardcore effort into it. Like I have put effort into it, like, the animations I've made and stuff.
Yeah.
But I haven't been consistent, and I haven't really found, like, for me, I realize, like, at least in the sense, like, this to me is a groove that I like. Like, I like us doing the art check because I like, hanging out with you guys, and I like the accountability to make sure I'm being productive in my work. But I haven't really found my groove in like the thing I want to consistently do. And I will say there's something about, like, when I was doing Big Illustration Party Time, and this is long ago, but like one thing about it was we sincerely had fun, and we cared about every single like edit, like to the point where there was an we took it out, like where there was like a possible point to put in humor, we put in humor. And it was something we really took joy in. And so like the success of that podcast at the time, which was really successful at the time, we outranked like NPR and all sorts of stuff. And I know this is like Wayback Machine, but I think part of why it was successful was it started with us having fun and making something really good. And then it's almost like people caught up with us. Like,
you were also an early adopter. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I knew about you guys way before I knew you guys.
Yeah.
And that was a recommendation from an artist. I used to do these artist groups, and some artist told me about it at podcasts, and I'm like, well, what's a podcast?
Yeah, but I mean,
yours was like one of the first podcasts I ever heard, and definitely one of the first, if not the first, about illustration.
Yeah, I think we might have been the first about illustration, but the thing that I think made it unique at the time, other than just being an early adopter, was the fact that we were actually we were sincerely making the best thing we could. And then by the time it actually kind of gained traction, because we had done quite a few episodes before it kind of went like all over the internet, and like to where it was like illustrators told illustrators about it. And by that point, it was like I was saying, it was like people were kind of catching up to our party because we were already doing it, and we were doing it well. So to me, like the thing that if I'm going to do a show that's highly edited and stuff like that, I do need to make sure it's something I can commit to and try to kind of put that type of energy into. And so for me, like that's the big hurdle. And that would also be a similar thing to what you're talking about, Corey, where I don't know necessarily what that medium would be. I would imagine I should probably have something that could work really effectively as a podcast. But I also think if it's a book review thing, it would be, and it's visual books, it would be cool to have visuals to it. So, and also that would be a limited thing where it's like I would literally just go through my collection, and at some point, I would get past Z, but maybe not. I don't know. It also sounds monumental and terrifying, so I don't know, because I don't want to commit to something where it takes eternity to do and then pulls from the other work. That's a big gamble, because like the whole thing, art is all a gamble, and it's like limited resources of, do I have the time to invest in that and in my comic? Because the comic has to be first, but that could enrich the comic in the sense of like, I do think that would help connect more people to the comic.
Yeah, and I've toyed with the idea of different things. I mean, if I was purely after numbers, I've said this a number of times, I'm really good at making software tutorials. Like I make really good software tutorials.
Yeah, you do.
And if I wanted good numbers, I mean, those are the videos that just naturally on my channel get really good numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I hate doing it. So I will do that. Honestly, there are two reasons that I will make a software tutorial. One is if my students would benefit from that video, then I'm getting paid to do that, as a teacher. And the other one is if I think I'm going to forget something that I just learned, then I'll make a tutorial for myself as kind of a roadmap for, old man memory. But I mean, when it comes to like the choice between being a person who creates content about content or creating content, I'm always going to be happier creating content.
Yeah, of course.
Creating content about content, like, we'll just say it. Meta content is what drives traffic more than content does.
Mm-hmm.
People like talking about Star Wars, and I know this is a controversial statement to say, but people like talking about Star Wars more than they like Star Wars. They like critiquing it. I mean, I'm talking about the masses.
Mm-hmm.
There are way more people that are watching a YouTube review video about what happened to Boba Fett in a comic book than bought the comic.
Agreed.
And so, but that's not where my heart is. And so I'm trying to strike that balance between, I want to create meta content because I have some interesting things to say about some of the things that I'm making, but also because it's a good way to find and build an audience.
Mm-hmm.
But my true love really is in creating the thing itself.
Exactly. Well, so that's the balance, is how do you navigate that? And like for me, if I were to do a review thing, first off, I would have to make it personal, because I have no interest in generic. And so I would want it to be like a personal thing and approach it more from an angle of like, also like learning, like this is what I've taken from this as a cartoonist. Like this is what I apply into my own work. I think that would be the only way I could keep interested in something like that. And second, it would have to be secondary to the main thing, which is the comics themselves. In your case, it would be like the animations or like the illustrations and the patches and other content you're making, like sticker stints and stuff like that. So I think it is a hard thing to navigate and gauge. And I really would, it's part of why I was even bringing my thing up on here too, was like, I really need to think of a format where it could be done, but done really well. Like I'd want it actually edited and stuff. So I need to kind of think about it before I actually do it, because I may not do it.
Yeah, and the challenge, I'm having the same challenge. I've come up to the gates of, and then walked away from those gates several times of a team. Like I keep thinking that there'd be some real value in somebody editing my stuff for me, because I can edit it. I did video production professionally for years, really early on in my career, but I'm still good at it. And I can still cut video, well. But it's time consuming. And so the challenge is, for me, it's almost, to do it really well, it's almost as time consuming to create the meta content as it is to create the original content.
Yeah. But that's why I think what you were describing.
I'm half as productive. Basically, I make the choice of like, what can I do that's like passably good meta content, which is like kind of the stuff that I'm putting out now. Is I'll do time lapse videos because I can just speed it up real fast and slap my logo on it and whatever.
Great. That's great. Like the idea of time lapse might be kind of the solution. Like you were saying this at the top too, where it's like you could do a time lapse video and then go on, like talk about philosophy or whatever, it is that you kind of want to talk about, and yet you also keep people engaged, and you're repurposing content that's already there and was made in the act of creating it. I think that's a good way to do it.
But there's the challenge is doing that reduces my output.
Yeah, I know.
That really significantly reduces my output. So at the end of my life, would I rather have 50% of the projects done and a bunch of content about those projects?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the hard part. And to some extent, it would be a shame to have way more projects that no one sees. Right. And so that would be one extreme where I just make stuff and I never share it and I never try to get it out there and I never promote it and I never do any of that stuff. Now, I don't think that's good. I think that's a waste. And fairly self-serving and narcissistic. I don't think there's a lot of benefit to that.
No.
But the other thing is
to like put out a book and not want that book to sell is full of it. Like
right.
We want viewers, we want readers, we want people to see our work,
So I mean, this is my rambly way of going full circle. My main reason for trying to decide where to put my efforts is not one of like, what's going to make me the most money or what's going to be the most whatever, but like, because you kind of took it in an authentic route. I don't think I'm being inauthentic in trying to make that choice. I think it's what is the most effective thing that I can do that doesn't detract too much from my production, because everything is an opportunity cost. It's all a trade-off.
Yeah.
Every time I make meta content, it is at the cost of producing the original content. And so that's what I've been thinking a lot about the last couple weeks, months, is it's just like, is Instagram just a sham at this point? Is it so jacked up because Facebook bought it and did their stupid algorithmically driven timeline that it is pointless to keep putting quarters in that machine because it's a slot machine and it's never going to pay out? Or do I just keep doing it? That I just need to continue because I'm teaching this stuff, and so I'm deeply ingrained into like people that are studying the algorithms, and I'm reading the white papers that they're writing, I'm reading the books, and I'm talking to experts on the inside that are doing these things. Instagram specifically is the easiest one for me to use. Mm-hmm. And probably the least likely to pay out any actual results based on. I just feel like Facebook has not learned their lesson of crapping on creators.
Yeah,
they continue to do it. They're going to continue to stifle it.
I think all social media platforms are usually going to end up betraying the creators that made them. I think that. The reason I brought up authenticity was more of like, it's kind of like that scenario and I think you know this, but it's sort of like that scenario where, let's say I finish my book, or you finish your next patch illustration. You have that brief moment of like a blank canvas, right? And the danger of the blank canvas, and we know this about art, but this is in social media too, where it's like the danger of the blank canvas is infinite possibilities. And an infinite canvas can kill an artist, right? Like, because the infinite is frightening and unforeseeable and ungraspable. And so what we need is some kind of structure to look at. And so I would say it's an infinite canvas scenario when it comes to social media. And I think to an extent, you just kind of have to pick one. And like for Scott, YouTube has had success more than I think the other platforms. So I think for Scott to double down and do YouTube, it wouldn't be a foolish call. Like, Scott, if you came to me and were like, dude, which social media platform should I really focus on? I'd be like, dude, YouTube. Like, yeah. You've been at it long enough to have had growth. And while that growth compared to like I don't know if we had Holly on here, right? Like, again, like Holly's numbers are ridiculous and would put any of our numbers to shame. But the point being, like, and for her, there's other people with ridiculous numbers. But my point is, it's not ridiculous for Scott to pick YouTube. Corey, it's a hard decision for you because your follower count is remarkably close on a lot of your platforms. And so I would say it's like a green vista. And I would also say, if your research has led you to think that Instagram may not be the right thing for the best bang for your buck, then like target YouTube. I mean, it's a hard thing to say, but I also get it, because I may not be the best person to talk about it because I'm a late adopter. Like, I'm a person who I don't personally like the process, and it takes me a while to kind of get in the flow of it with any media process. So I don't know, but I will say it's all rigged. It's all a game. I mean, like the whole media in general is somewhat rigged and somewhat a game. And so it's like you kind of have to play the game if we're doing media. It's the crappy part. But I do think part of it's finding your tribe. Like Gary was saying, like, a lot of our art is like trying to find our audience through our art,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't want to answer Corey's question for him. Like, every year I have made the goal that I am going to try to focus more on Instagram and get back to doing Instagram and be more diligent about that. And this year I just decided I don't care. I mean, I haven't posted in a year. Last time I posted was probably when I was doing some art challenge like Inktober or something. But I've seen people that have obviously made Instagram work well for them and everything. It just, to me, especially with what I'm doing right now, where a lot of it is like, keyword based and everything. And that's how people are finding it, that it doesn't necessarily, I mean, you can promote that kind of stuff, but it just doesn't, that platform really doesn't work for kind of the books and things that I'm publishing and all that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, and it's not that I don't like Instagram. I think it's, and to be honest, it's very rare that I even scroll through Instagram. I know a lot of people, I've really kind of moved away from even looking at a lot of social media lately, just because it's, it seems like it's kind of a time suck to me. So I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to answer that. And I see the value in it, obviously. And I mean, but, and the other thing is, it's like people put so much value on like an Instagram. Like if I do like an interview on, or something like what I was doing when I launched the Comic World Builder, I did a live thing with design cuts and everything. And they're like, well, where are you on Instagram? I'm like, I don't really post on Instagram, but a lot of artists, that's their thing. And that's a metric that they, you can look at my, my subscribers on YouTube, and it may be somewhat impressive. But then if you look at Instagram, it's not so impressive, but that's just because I don't do anything on there. I mean, you've got to post and you've got to, do that stuff to grow that. And I lost kind of interest. And plus it was taking too much of my time to do that. And I wasn't seeing the benefits from it. So.
Yeah, and Scott, it almost sounds like that became the thing Corey was talking about, where it's like, if you're spending a good chunk of your limited resources and time on YouTube, and then you're spending a tinier chunk of that on Facebook and a tinier chunk on Twitter, and then a tinier chunk on Instagram, and then you look at the chunk of time you're creating art, and it's less than creating all those things. It does become like I think essential to kind of pare it down. It's kind of like the advice I always give artists and writers and stuff, where I'm like, don't scatter yourself too thin on like a million projects and miss the ability to kind of target. Like, the reason I'm always telling new illustrators and artists and stuff to like have a targeted focus is like, if you try everything, you're significantly lowering your possibility of succeeding. Whereas if you like are starting in illustration and you just start out and you go, you know what, I'm going to try to illustrate cereal boxes. That's my thing. That's my game for like the month. I mean, as weird as that is, you're probably way more likely to get a gig illustrating cereal boxes than somebody doing scattershot. It's the same thing. It's like we have limited resources. We have limited bullets in our gun, right? And there's a couple targets we have to hit. It's like you really have to be smart about the target. So I don't think it's foolish to think about, but I do think it also has to come down to like what you like using. And if what you like using isn't working, that's a whole different story, But Corey, I don't know, I got to look at your Instagram, but I do feel like the way you're utilizing Instagram is going to lead to more followers on Instagram. For sure.
And I would agree with you if it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But Instagram is not built for organic growth anymore. It's rigged in such a way that there just isn't that. The person who basically ruined Facebook was put in charge of updating the Instagram algorithm and timeline. And you saw the same exact things happen. So it's anti-organic growth at the moment, and they're big enough now to where I think they have. I mean, there's infighting between Instagram and Facebook, and the people at Facebook who have all the money hate Instagram because it's popular. But I mean, Instagram is struggling to the point now where they've started running ads on Hulu to try to make themselves cool and hip again. I mean, they're running ads with, trendsetters and to try to say, and it to me feels like the death throes of that platform. I mean, they're big enough that they're actually in antitrust problems with Congress right now. Otherwise, I actually think Facebook and Instagram would have gone away if they were playing by the rules, because I think they already reached the end of their product life cycle. And the only reason that either one is still around is because of antitrust behaviors. They're buying out competitors. They're threatening competitors. They're taking resources away from competitors. I mean, it's the same as robber barons of the 20s and 30s. It's just pixels now instead of steel production.
What do you think would be the best to promote your thing? I mean, would you do it through Discord? Here's the thing, I know so little about Discord. Is Discord a social media platform?
Discord, it is technically a social media platform, but it has no viral potential because it's basically like Slack or Monday.com or something like that. Basically, it is.
So it's like a group organizing.
Yeah, it's a messaging tool. It's basically a chat room. a really effectively, designed chat room, but it's basically a chat room. I've had this crazy idea, and I have come to the conclusion that I don't have the connections or the interest or skills to get it done. But what I think needs to happen is that we need an NPR of social media. We need a social media platform that is not driven by advertising dollars, because we need a platform that doesn't have its goal of mining the data of its users. It has the goal of allowing the marketplace of ideas. This is where I get into my more negative thinking, but the marketplace of ideas is dead. That age is over. The marketplace of ideas died as soon as people began commoditizing communication. And so because communication became a product, and then behavioral data became something that you could predict, and then predictive futures were something that were being bought and sold, and now actual control of human beings is being purchased. It's and Facebook is, I agree with what Gary's saying there.
Yeah, I feel the same.
It's basically become a way to keep in touch with my grandmother, but the problem is, I don't see right now in the media landscape, I don't see an effective option. I mean, Mixer died. Twitch is interesting. But it's mostly about gaming. All of the major social media channels are diametrically opposed to organic growth, because their bottom line depends on being able to manipulate the masses more than help people get their message out. And traditional media is, I saw the other day, like, I would love to have a network come on and say, hey, we'll sign you, and let's make a show, that type of thing would be great. I saw the other day that, like, let me pull this up. Cartoon Network, a huge percentage of Cartoon Network's programming is one show. Let me find this, because this was nuts. And this is like why. Whenever I see people doing this, I'm like, oh, so you've just decided that you're dead. You've just decided that you're dead. You're just going to milk this for all it's worth. 59% of Nickelodeon's programming next week is comprised of 3 franchises: SpongeBob, The Loud House, and Paw Patrol, with 38% of it being only SpongeBob. Like, look at this chart. This is from Cartoon Brew.
I didn't even know SpongeBob was still that popular.
Well, SpongeBob should be that popular.
I love SpongeBob.
When you look at this, like, Hollywood has become, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'd love to see the percentage of dollars broken out into franchises and reboots and remakes and whatever.
Here's where I need to counter what you're saying, though, because I agree with you on networks, but networks are kind of like, they're dinosaurs, like all TV networks. I haven't even had a TV in years. I just subscribe to, like, the whatever shows, like Netflix and Disney Plus and all that. But like, to me, I think one important thing that we're kind of forgetting is it's also like a crazy, huge opportunity laden landscape too, where it's like, like there's more avenues for animation than there have ever been. Partially because it's all diversified to these networks, where it's like you have, Netflix is now the indie film publisher, right? Like Amazon is now the indie film publisher. So all these television shows that never would have seen the light of day, like never would have had a risk taken. Networks never took risks. I think Conan O'Brien, right, was like one of the risks networks did for a little bit, and then they kind of pulled back on it. Like even one of their best products of network TV screwed over one of their best products because they didn't know it was one of their best products. So they're like, and that's been network TV from the get-go. Sure. So you have shows like, like Game of Thrones, HBO television shows never would have been that big where the networks were where they were at when, like, I think Seinfeld was like the most bold thing a network had ever done. But the point being, like, Game of Thrones wouldn't have like been able to even compete. It would have been on that weird side channel if networks had any power anymore. I mean, it literally, it's all changing. But one of the things that bums me out when I hear, because I agree with it, but one of the things that bums me out when I hear people talk about like how like the whole thing's dead and like individual creators like are going to have trouble in the future. That the landscape's never been better than it is right now for independent creators. Like even in indie comics, like there were these little heydays in the comic world where comics sold really well, and certain few indie comics sold well. So if you go back to like the days where like Jeff Smith was making Bone was making a crap load of money. But there were like 4 other indies that had any distribution in comic book shops because nobody cared about indies. All they wanted was like the mainstream. And even when they did the mainstream, or the break from the mainstream, it's like the image boom, right? That everybody talks about. Like the image boom was just all the dudes from the mainstream. And all they did was make the same characters with like different costumes, and then they owned the rights to them, so they made more money. That was just great for the creator. But my point is, it like right now, if you look at what Image is putting out, it's like this vast variety of like weird independent stuff that never would have been put out in like the 90s. They wouldn't have touched in the 90s. Like it would have been on a side rack with like maybe some of the weird Vertigo titles, right? But now like, you go into, pre-COVID, but you'd go into a bookstore and you can actually see graphic novels of all sorts of genres and variety. And it like to an extent that's way further than comics have ever been. So I guess my point is just like, I agree with you. Like there are certain windows that are closing, but we can't forget that like, we're also in a weird scenario where like somebody with like no name recognition, that's not a huge rock star, can go on Kickstarter and fund their comic. Not everybody can, but we're in a scenario where that can happen. And when Kickstarter gets bought out, we're going to find I don't know, I'm optimistic that we'll find an angle that will overthrow Kickstarter or find an angle that'll overthrow Indiegogo, because unfortunately a lot of the crowdfunding stuff is getting bought out by like political parties. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I would say like, it's hard to do an Indiegogo if you're not like on board with like the Comicsgate thing, which I'm not, I'm not going to trash anyone who's on it, but like my point is that's just not where my mentality's at. So I'd probably have trouble selling on Indiegogo, but my point is like, there's, the landscape, we can't get too down on the landscape because it is vastly better than it was. But I don't know. That was a rant. Sorry.
Yeah. And I know
it's always been bought. It's always been gatekeeped.
I know. And this is why I like this form of content. I think if I were to choose a particular form of content, I think it's live streaming conversations, because you have time to like flesh out an idea rather than. So here's my thing. When I say the marketplace of ideas is dead, I kind of feel like marketplaces are kind of like comic book characters. They're never really dead. They're going to resurrect them somehow. Like it's going to come back around, right? I think history is cyclical, and I think it's cyclical in more of like a spring than in like a ring, right? It doesn't come around exactly where it was before, and it usually comes around better. I mean, as sucky as
it might be a spring downward though, it could be.
It could. I don't think don't think that's out of the limit of possibility. But I do think we're better off today than we were 50 years ago, and we're better off 50 years ago than we were 100 years ago. And I mean, for the course of human history, generally speaking, we are trending in a good direction. I mean, the last 5 years has been pretty rough, but statistically, people are still slightly better off, generally speaking, in most categories. And that's not to say that there aren't problems or whatever. But I do think that there will come a time again when a few years ago, I think was the sweet spot. It was before brute force AI deep learning, was happening, and algorithms were actually programmed by human beings rather than written by AI.
Yeah.
I do think there's that. I think we're going to come to a path here. I gotta have Gary on my show, because everything he's saying in the comments, I'm like super.
I know. I actually love everything he's saying, and let's put this up. But it's like the diversity in content is astounding. Challenges how to find anything of value in the aforementioned ocean of garbage, which I'll kind of agree with, in the sense that I know I went on that tirade, but it's like I also do think, like, in my youth, when I discovered punk, I connected to it in a way that I don't even know if it's possible anymore.
Right.
For people who are the age I was at when music like spoke to me, because there's so much possibility. It's like when you can check out anything, it almost decreases the yes, Chris. Yes, the AI apocalypse.
I live, breathe, and speak, and so yes, it's probably coming back to the apocalypse.
So I do agree the algorithm is problematic.
But here's the challenge. Here's the challenge, I think, as a society that we have. Not to be cliche, but I do have an 11-year-old daughter. To quote Dumbledore, I think we're going to choose between soon what is good and what is easy.
Yep.
And that choice is, it is much easier to let our lives be dictated to us by external forces. We don't like that idea, but people, I mean, when Loki said, humans are built to worship and built to kneel down, like, this is your natural state, is to have me as your king. I do think that is part of the human condition, that we're a little scared of our agency. We're a little scared of our responsibility, and we like it a lot of the times when it's not our fault.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the easy route, is to have it be somebody else's fault. And Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg and all those unpopular or unknown people that are at the head of Google and Alphabet, they're happy to have you hate them as they swim through their vault of gold coins. They don't care, and so they're happy to take that on. And if we let them, then I do think that we will reach some sort of event horizon of the robot apocalypse, right? And so while I think that's a possibility, I actually trust people to make the right choice and the hard choice. And at some point in time, we're going to have to choose to do the harder thing and be human and be authentic. And I think that's going to, I mean, there was a comment that Gary made earlier about, the amount of things. There's this thing that I've been reading up on lately. The human brain is not meant to be connected to this many other human brains. Like, we're kind of tribal, right? If you think about like our ability to understand and connect to generations, we lose information really fast. My wife's great uncle, so her grandmother's brother just died, right? That's 2 generations back. And you would think that 2 generations back isn't that long ago, but like really that's a long time. Like I don't know my grandparents' siblings that well. I've met them. There's a lot of them, and I don't know if I could point all of them out in a crowd. But then also, so that's going backwards. But then going laterally, our structure, our psyche, our emotions, our intelligence is not meant to be connected to hundreds of thousands of other people, millions or billions of other people. It's like this idea of doom scrolling it's an overwhelming problem to be inundated with that much horrible negativity, because we're driven deep seated in our soul to connect and empathize with other people. And there's a certain limit of empathy that you can have to other people experiencing pain before it starts to have a horrible negative impact on you. And so I actually think a more fractured and less connected society would be at least mentally more healthy and might be more interesting in the possibility of artists to be successful. But the problem that I have is like the people that are adding the least amount of value, the distributors of content, are in control of everything right now, but they're not creating the value that's being distributed. They're literally just the truck that's driving it down the freeway, but they're not what that truck is shipping.
Yeah.
Like Disney isn't making content. Disney is hiring content creators to make content. The real value that it's added is not by Disney. It's by the person that wrote that story with like several other people, and the actors that acted it out, and the illustrators that designed those characters and designed those sets. It's in the individual creators.
I agree.
The problem is this monolithic, cyclopic vision of what is important and what makes money is driven by the distribution machine.
It's a mix. I've also seen this. I've seen this in comics a lot. Like, so if there's a character that people grew up with in their childhood and they connected to, like Spider-Man, right? There's a certain contingent of people who, once they're sold on a thing, that's all they want. They just want that thing over and over again. And they feel connection and control over that thing, whatever that thing is, right? And so to an extent, also that person who's so connected to that thing, and I was one of them, right? Like Spider-Man was like my thing as a kid. And then I went out and bought like every Spider-Man thing. And then I got into Spawn. And so I'd like buy any comic that had Spawn, even if it was like a crossover with Spawn, right, and Spawn's on like one page, I'd buy an issue I never bought because I was like really into Spawn. Because I was a child at this point.
Because we seek the familiar.
That's one of the things is like, so we're also fighting familiar. And that's hard to do. And that's the battle of the indie comic creator and the battle of the indie animator, right? People for some reason are just drawn to the thing other people think is cool. And so that's the big distribution problem, is like distributors have a way to say, this is grouped with the cool kids. So now you're at the cool kids table in the giant cafeteria that is adulthood, right? And, you know, when you're an indie publisher or an indie creator, you're at the nerds table. And so nobody wants to sit at the nerds table. And what's weird is half the cool shit is at the nerds table. That's the crux. That's the conundrum. So how do we get the cool stuff to, you know, the general population of that cafeteria, and tell people stop giving a crap what's at the cool kids table or what's at the nerds table, and just look at quality. And unfortunately, like, we're not in a quality driven society where like you could see the most amazing movie in the world, and if it's not like the top 5 movies you telling someone to see it is going to have less currency than if it's like one of the top 5, because you adding that by saying like, hey, I liked this thing that also happens to align with the top 5. It just, with the way people are psychologically geared, they're like, oh, it's already being paid attention to, so now I need to pay attention to it.
Okay, hold on. I want to take
that ties into algorithms like on a way that kind of cuts out the distributor a little bit.
I want to take this a little bit further. I like this analogy. So we're in a lunchroom. We got this huge section of the lunchroom that's Disney, Google, and Facebook, right? And they are, I don't actually care what they're doing. I just want them to stop lighting all the other tables on fire and killing everybody who is sitting there.
So that's my point, though, is like the table isn't Facebook and Google. The system of distribution isn't necessarily the cool kids table. The system is flawed in the sense that all it's going to amplify are the people who are already amplified. It becomes like a self-fulfilling cycle and a gatekeeping on its own.
And I'm fine with that. That's not my problem.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because I understand that, because people have a biological imperative for safety.
Yeah.
And they don't like cognitive dissonance, and they will seek out the familiar because biologically food that has been tasted that didn't kill that person is safe. And so they're willing to do that. I'm fine with that. My problem is the people that are controlling those tables are actively destroying the other tables so that there are not options to put stuff out there. It's like you walk in and you want to choose where you want to sit, and there's 98% of the tables that are owned by one company, and the other 2% are on fire.
Yeah, of course.
So that's my problem, is that these companies have become so large that they are they're actively destroying valuable competition.
Yeah, agreed. And I back you 100% on that. Like, the competition should be dealt with, but what I'm getting at is like the battle is still swimming against the tide of that popular opinion. Chris points it out too, because I've actually seen this with my own work. But he said, I totally feel you there. Like, I see reposters of non-original content get way more views and likes than the person who made the thing. And I totally have seen that. You can find posts of like my puppet checkup art that have got like millions of likes on Twitter. They've been shared on like Instagram. And I haven't posted anything. If I posted that on my own feed, it wouldn't get nearly that. It would get like 50 likes. But I've seen like the meme generators. It gets in that little loop where it's like it's successful beyond what you did. It's just like, oh, this is on the popular thing, so now it's popular. And so that's that. But I also feel like that's one of the beauties of punk rock and what we kind of do, which is like, I think the beauty of punk rock is punk rock doesn't care about the tables. It's just like, I don't care about the cool kids or the nerds. I'm going to go in the bathroom and smoke cigarettes, like, not that that's a good thing, but I'm just saying it's like, it's like, screw all of it. It's stupid. And it doesn't have anything to do with quality. And the beauty of punk rock is it finds its own quality. However, that's been bought and commercialized too. But
it still bothered the Ramones that they weren't getting airtime on the radio.
Oh, of course. We all want airtime on the radio.
Yeah.
But you got to fight. You got to fight for it and get it when you can. And then like pick your platforms and decide whether you want to do, it's hard, man. It's a hard sell. Cause like there's certain things that I think we all know we could do if we really wanted to game it and we didn't have a love of art,
Oh, if I know exactly what I would do on Instagram if I wanted to become really popular. I would throw away my personal brand completely, start a new account that only reposted mildly popular art, because I see those accounts doing gangbusters. I mean, they're killing it. And the reason that they are is because they can post 5 times a day because they're not creating anything. The aggregators of content. And the reason that people are following them is not because oh, this is popular and there's a crowd. That's why the algorithms are promoting that content. The reason people are following them is that people are inherently lazy and they'll take the path of least resistance. It actually takes work to seek out talent. But if I have somebody who's going to aggregate that talent, like Gary's saying here, wouldn't it be ironic if we had to recreate gatekeepers and curators who are out there finding unique and interesting things and gathering it up for smaller communities? That's the successful thing on Instagram, is you make it easier for lazy people to look at good content not by creating good content, but by just sharing good content. But then saying it's not work. I'm just saying,
think about Gary. Like, Gary's got a brilliant book, right? Like, it's an amazing book. And yet I go to the bookstore, I don't see that book, right? I have a book I feel pretty good about. You go to the bookstore, you're not going to see that book. So what is that? That's a distributor issue, right? Like, it's not really curated and going to end up in like the very small selection of what's out there. So like, that's the catch, is like, it's a game of swimming against the tide. And so it's just a question of which tide you want to swim in and how bad that ocean is, because it's all crap. I mean, it's always been a tough game. Like, what the Ramones were fighting against was like payola, which is like, you can't fight that system. Like, the radio was literally bought and sold by like 4 big bands that were owned by like the largest record companies. And the record companies were literally just putting cash in with the record for the DJs to play it. You can't fight that. You can't get that airtime. That airtime's bought, sold, and paid for, right? Chris has a good point. Get it into Oprah's book club. Yeah, that's literally, that would be great. I don't think any of us would fight that if that happened to something we put out. But the point being, like, I feel it, and I feel like it's a problem, but I also feel like it's a cyclical problem. And I do agree, like, these shouldn't let any companies get monopolistically large. Like, that's just one of the biggest problems we have in our entire country, in every industry, right? There's a real problem if Walmart is literally your only option for groceries in your area. If they've been able to get that large, like Amazon, like, their control over the entire industry is frightening, and yet it's almost unavoidable. Which, by the way, please purchase my book on Amazon, because that's literally one of the biggest games in town. So that's the system we have to game. But it's like, I agree. I wouldn't like shed a tear if you saw some of these larger entities, like, getting broken up, because they just shouldn't be legally allowed to get so large. But I like the idea of smaller communities, especially smaller communities of content creators. But I think that kind of starts with that can exist on any platform. I feel like if it's platform reliant, though, like, when that platform dies, you end up running the risk of being Tom, so.
Dude, Tom was legit, though.
Yeah, Tom was.
Facebook, but MySpace, Tom. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Think about what Tom did. Tom, I saw this the other day. It was a meme, but he was on top of the biggest social media thing at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And then instead of like saying, "Hey, I could twist this to to manipulate the masses," he's like, "Oh, my product's at the end of its life cycle," and he walked away and didn't actively seek to manipulate billions of people. Just so I actually kind of respect Tom. He might not have been the best businessman, but at least he didn't capitalize on it. I don't know. So I think, like,
I do like the idea of forming a Borg collective, by the way, that Gary was mentioning.
Every time I have this conversation, I think I come back to this realization that I'm the most me when I come to an understanding that I'm not going to be popular. My work isn't going to do huge numbers, and it's because I am by nature fairly rebellious.
Yeah.
And so you know, I mean, I remember, and I did this in business as well. I remember having this conversation. I was talking to the controller of the company that I was working for, and I was stating my dissatisfaction with the fact that I'm constantly dissatisfied, right? And he said, "You haven't realized yet that that's never going to go away. Like you are a dissatisfied person. Like you are. That's the value that you bring to an organization is that you show up and you begin to fix the problems that you see. Like your value is not that you become complacent and happy in your job, but that your job drives you nuts and you actively seek to fix the problems." And so since I've taken on this mantle of dissatisfied rebel, you know, or was born with it or whatever, it just every once in a while I think
that's part of art though. That's what I was getting at with like the cool kids table and the nerds table is like my point was like not I don't think any of us would be happy being the guy just aggregating other people's stuff and going, isn't this cool? Look at this. This is awesome.
Yeah, no, and I'm not interested in that, but I even would enjoy if I had huge numbers of people hating my work, because at least then people would be reacting to it.
Yeah, I agree, man. And my point is like that dissatisfaction you described, though, that's just being a creative, man. When you're a visual communicator, you're problem solving. And you can't problem solve unless you constantly see problems. Yeah. That's my take on it, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think just every time I have this type of conversation, I just...
Gary, I'm sorry, I got to side with hot dogs on that.
Hot dogs are disgusting.
They're amazing.
Sold at every street corner in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. I sometimes don't you just wish that you could, and I don't want, this sounds so insulting and elitist. I don't mean it like that, but I actually kind of envy this stupid dumb masses that are happy.
Yeah.
You know, envy the people that are just like satisfied with life.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be like. I don't know what that would be like, but like I feel a drive to point out hypocrisy and make things better. And
well, and I think part of that is you know, we're creating, and creating is a conscious effort to kind of move against the grain. Because the majority of what we have is consumption in all fields. And so it's like when you're trying to actually build, innately it's kind of making a conscious decision to not have like an easy go of it. And so it's like even this, you know, it's like I had a brief bit of that like this weekend where I'm like, this is like New Year's, you know, and a lot of people, you know, even if they're like stuck at home, are just like, I'm going to spend time with the family and stuff. And I'm staying up till like 3 a.m. working on the next graphic novel that can come out so it cannot sell any issues like the first one. So like, you know, and I'm sure we all have similar stories to that, but like the point being like but that's the struggle. And I'd rather do that for good work than sell out and, you know, have some hit song and like not be able to sleep at night for the wrong reasons, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I do envy people who can just be like, they don't feel a calling for anything, which is why I actually get very frustrated with people who claim they're cartoonists, but they aren't cartooning. Cause I'm like, you're not even in the fight and you're claiming it, you know, like I don't know if that Gary gets that too. Gary, gotta have you on next time.
Oh, look at this. Many are like Cypher in the Matrix.
Ooh.
They're happy with the simulated steak.
All right, Gary and Chris, we have to have you guys on.
So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I just think it's every once in a while I mean, I think the majority of the time, I don't get like this often, but maybe it's because it's my first day back from work after doing nothing but whatever I wanted, which I spent most of the time animating and illustrating, and then building Legos with my kids.
Yeah, a lot of Lego building around this time, man.
Yeah, I think whenever I poke my head up and I look around, I'm like, artists are actively choosing discomfort. I mean, we are knowingly going out of our way to choose a hard path. And sometimes you're just like, maybe that Matrix digital steak life would just be so much easier. I mean, I could make more money easier doing so many other mindless, dumb things. But the problem is I would feel empty and soulless. And I don't think that's not to say that I'm saying that those are bad occupations. I just say for me as an individual, making that choice would be choosing Matrix steak.
Dude, there's a reason so many creatives connected to Catcher in the Rye, because I think the core premise of that doesn't get old. Like, I read that now and I'm like, there's a lot of things about Holden Caulfield I don't relate to anymore. As a kid, I did. And I'm like, I don't know, man, kind of grow up, like that kind of thing. But right. the one thing that's so tragic about that character, even now reading it, is like, having this young teenager look at the world as it is and go like, man, all these people are phonies. Like, they're all phonies. It's all a bunch of fakes, And it's like, I still relate to that. Like, where I do tend to kind of have these moments of being like, really, you guys really like this? Like, this is not good. There's no quality to it, but like, okay, and I think that's the fight. I think that's the fight, and I think Gary pointed that out. Gary's making a lot of good points in the chat.
Yeah, I think with that is a really interesting. It's interesting that you bring up Catcher in the Rye, because I was just thinking about his hunting hat.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that yesterday. So for those that haven't read the book or were forced to read it and thus actively rebelled against that force, he puts his hat on when he feels comfortable and he feels like he can be himself. And the irony of the whole situation is that most of the book he doesn't have his hat on, and while he has this inner monologue of decrying the fakeness of society, he's not wearing the thing that makes him authentic and real so that he can fit in. And every once in a while, I think, if I just wore a white shirt and tie and like a suit and like had a different haircut and used the right words and, talked about the right books, like my daily life would be so much easier. But I wouldn't be who I am. I would literally be playing the part of someone. And I think so many people go through life trying to fit in rather than trying to find where they belong. And that's my whole point in this conversation is not that I want to change who I am or what I'm doing. I just want to find where I am and what I'm doing and where that fits.
So that's, I guess my point was like, don't be surprised if that doesn't end up finding a landing spot, because I think even for folks like us, if you find that spot you belong, you're instantly going to be suspicious of that spot and dislike the spot itself. And also your imposter syndrome will kick in hard, and you'll be like, is this even a spot? Am I even deserving of this spot? But I think, no, I'm faking it in the spot. So, I think this was a fascinating conversation. We have gone like 2 hours and 10 minutes, but I relate to it a lot. Scott, I hope we didn't.
No, I've been getting work done and just listening. It's been great.
I love it. I actually love that element of all of these hangouts we do too, where we get to process things, we get to get through work and keep each other accountable to make cool things. I think what you're making, Corey, is cool. I think you're going to find the niche. I just think it's a matter of time, but it also is one of those things where you can't necessarily trust me because there are artists who like it just doesn't, like there's some books that should be like the best books in the world. Like I mentioned it on our last one, but it's like it stunned me that like Pizzeria Kamikaze isn't like on the top graphic novels like list, like on Amazon or anything. And I think it's a lot of the time out of print. And I mean, there's been a like movie made of it, and like yet like hardly anyone's read it. It's just like one of those books that can happen. And I mean, keep in mind, like Edgar Keret and Asaf Anuka have good careers, but my point is like books can come and go, and like and
Oh, sure.
sometimes like the huge stuff doesn't land, but you got to kind of stay in it. And then maybe you'll be lucky enough to be like the Ramones, and then your children and your grandchildren can enjoy the fruits of benefits you never felt in your own life.
Yeah, and I mean, and that goes to one of the biggest problems about this conversation.
Yeah,
it's not about money. I don't, and I know you're not saying that it is, but we're living in a system that makes us feel like financial success is success, and that money is validation of the quality of your work.
If it were, I'd feel better about some of the work I've gotten paid a lot of money to do.
Right. I've made a lot of money over the years and stuff that I don't care about. But yeah, I don't know. I think I think I'm going to look back, and there'll be about 30 to 50 people that really enjoyed my work when I'm dead. I'll be happy with that if they really enjoyed it.
I think it's possible that it could be more. I just think it depends.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying the most likely scenario is that there's going to be a small group of people who get to drop my name at parties, and no one will have any idea who they're talking about.
Well, that's the thing too, is like you got to know your aims, right? Like some of us are aiming to be more of a like Pixies than we are to be like, the
Taylor Swift,
Rolling Stones. I mean, it's like both rock and roll. Like the Rolling Stones, I like a lot of Rolling Stones albums, but some of us want to be that small band. Some of us, it just depends. But it is frustrating. I get it, because it's like if you're a band and you just want to play a gig for an audience, that's the feeling of being an artist a lot of the time, where it's like, I did this thing, check it out. And especially when it's animation and comics, where it is so labor intensive, and when you're like, I did this thing, it took such and such a long time, like, and 4 people are like, great job, and like 2 of them are people
yeah.
It's not the most fulfilling thing, but I don't know, man. I think it's part of the gig, and I think it's like that's a shared experience too, with most.
Yeah. I have very small goals. Like I designed a t-shirt one time, and years later, I was in a different town that I had never been in before, and I saw somebody wearing that t-shirt, and I knew that they had no idea who I was, and I was like, that's pretty rad.
That is a good feeling.
So that's kind of, I know that's probably happened to you, way more than it's ever happened to me. I mean, but
not that often in person. The weirdest experience for me, these are like little victories though, right? Like weirdest experience for me was this British TV show, IT Crowd.
Yeah.
Getting a text message from a friend of mine who lives in England, who's like, your poster's on their set. And I'm like, what? So I was on a set of a TV show for like 2 years. But it's like, and what's funny is pre that, I would have been really stoked about that. And I'd love to have it happen again, but it still was like that fleeting thing of like the moment I unboxed my proof. And I was like, woohoo, I did it. And then I'm like, but I got to finish the next thing. Yeah. And also I need people to read it. And it's a whole, it's just like I guess my point is it's just like it's a mess. It's a mess where we're constantly searching. That's a good thing though. Like my point is you should map those victories too. You should map the victory like when you get that billboard printed, like that's a victory. When I
saw that the other day. Yeah,
that's a huge thing. You just drove through a town and saw a billboard with your art. The problem is we know ourselves more than other people, but we're so in the weeds with ourselves, we can like miss all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're experiencing it. So you're like, I don't, like, so you can miss the fact that like last year you just won a bunch of animation awards for a short film and were screened in a bunch of, like anyhow, but you know what I mean? You can just mix that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Well, we could keep going, but the hour is up on this therapy session. I always feel so selfish when we do stuff like this. I'm like, thank you everyone for joining me while I air out my mental psychological problems. But anyway, yeah, I think ultimately what Chris is saying here is probably my goal, and I know it sounds like pretentious and
pretentious. Who cares?
Yeah, it sounds pretentious, and it also sounds really cliche, but I think it's cliche for a reason. It's kind of cool to have like people come to you and say, "Hey, I never thought about that." That's like one of the goals. I mean, I didn't reach a lot of people with my First Amendment post, but there was somebody on there that actually said, "Hey, thank you for always getting me to think in your captions. Like I really enjoy reading the captions of your Instagram post because it makes me think about stuff." And I was like, well, that's pretty cool, and so I there's that. I don't know. If anybody's concerned that I'm like sad or depressed or anything, I'm not. I just get introspective occasionally, and this is one of those existential vomits that I'm having live on YouTube.
And like the thing that's great about this kind of thing is this kind of thing won't just fade, regardless of how successful you are. Like, and so I think in that sense it's valuable to walk through because I don't think you're saying anything anybody doesn't relate to.
Sure.
Like anyone, like regardless of how successful they are, because it's like it just is the path of doing this, and then it's frustrating. But I will say, yeah, I mean, like we have to just count victories, and like even if they're huge victories, if they're small victories, they fade very quickly, and so it's like I don't know. I recently saw Soul. And it was a great movie. And like one of the best things that it was talking about, like sort of a fish like in the ocean constantly like searching for the ocean and being told, well, you're in the water. And he's like, yeah, but I want to be in the ocean. And it's like, you're kind of in it. And it's very similar, like where it's like we're in this process of making these things, and we put in a lot of thought and consideration into what we do. And even when you get like a comment, like you just talked about, it's like we're hardwired to only take in the negative or the lack of response. So like for me, like I totally relate to what you're talking about, because I'm like, with my book, all I'm seeing are the numbers it's not selling or the people who aren't reading it.
Right.
I rarely am focusing on like, a couple emails that I've gotten, one of which was somebody who like it appeared to like save their life from what they had worded it, how they had worded it. And that's it. But and that was impactful, and something that I remembered, and yet the next day all I thought about was like all the lack of readers and lack of, you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense. It's like you can literally be I mean, I guarantee like Scott probably, I don't know, Scott, like, you know, you're going to have that fleeting moment of like when you, let's say you put up a video and it gets a lot of comments, you'll have that fleeting moment of stoked, and then like that moment of like, well, it got, even on the most successful videos, you'll be like, it got so many views, but it could have gotten like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's never, I don't know if we ever arrive at a point where we're like, yes, you know.
No, that was my point, is we are by nature dissatisfied fixers.
And the problem is I'm never going to sleep enough, and then I'm never going to not sleep enough. I'm never going to get enough done on a daily basis. This is part of being a creative.
Yeah. What is the line from the Hellboy 2? Men were born with a hole in their heart that can never be filled.
Yeah. Yeah. Nature hates a vacuum.
Scott, final thoughts?
No. Where
can people find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at circworks.com. Also Circworks on YouTube, where I will keep pushing away whether my whether the channel continues to grow or not. So
is it 2021 and your stuff is still on sale, or did you take the sale off?
I did take the sale down. So there's still a smaller sale, but not like it was.
Well, okay. You guys missed out on that sweet sale, but go take advantage of the smaller sale.
Josh, where can we find your stuff?
JoshuaKemble.com, quarterlystories.com will take you directly to a page about this, 2 stories, which you should order on Amazon today if you haven't yet. And I know it's nerdy, but it's like it's an indie book, so literally every order helps cheat that algorithm we were all bemoaning about. And then also, if you're bored after this is done, definitely check out the Read, Live, Learn podcast, because I was on the latest episode, and it's really good and a really thoughtful, cool conversation. One of those small wins that I will easily forget about in 2 days, but I'm pretty proud of, because it was a good conversation, and it's a podcast I listened to that I was kind of flattered to be on. So
that's Read, Live, Learn.
Oh my gosh. I always mix live and learn. And I've done this since Read, Learn, Live. Sorry. Read, Learn, Live.
Learn, Live.
And it's John Monaster. But it's a really good conversation we had. So
I'm just looking it up right now. Cool. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to look and see. Is yours
Kayla said too, I just accepted a marketing job, and honestly, this is speaking to all of my fears about it. Worrying about numbers is so awful. We always think we can do better, and it's complete anarchy against social media. That's the way to go. So, yeah.
Yeah. Generally speaking, I think good content will always rise to the top. It all comes down to that.
The other thing is good content's always going to be cooler. And my experience is like, you can BS the algorithm. You can even BS readers. But like if you're in a room full of cartoonists, they know the people who can make comics and the people who can't,
Yeah, that's true. You can find my stuff at CoreyCarr.com. If you want to go check out some of what started, some of what spawned some of this conversation. I just posted something, I think it was this morning. I don't know, it feels like 3 weeks ago, and I'm already dissatisfied with it. So you can go check it out. It's a thing. I'm excited about it. I will turn it into a patch at some point soon. So
I'm really excited about these patches.
Yeah, it'll be good. I'm excited about it too. I'm excited to get to the actual screen printing part, but I want to make sure that I have a few designs my belt before I do it. I'm actually considering. Well, let's do this. There's a few people watching. If you're interested, go look at some of my stuff on my website and tell me which designs you think might be interesting as a single color screen print on a patch. Because I'm thinking about designing some new stuff like I have been doing, but also taking some of the older things like side effects may include death, stuff like that. Some of those ones I think would work well. But I want to make stuff that people are interested in. So let me know somehow. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube and whatever. You can comment on this video or just anywhere else. Okay. It's awesome. Go make stuff. It's better than not making stuff. I promise, even though this episode feels like it's not.